Craig, welcome back to WOL Radio.
As always, Carl, thank you very much for ever putting me on, but still putting me on. Thank you very much.
And by the way, Craig is a geopolitical analyst. Some of his clients out there, the international, local law enforcement agencies, the political folks, business people, elected officials, and he charges them for the information, to the research that he does. But now, today, you can get it for free just by listening. So call up a couple of your friends and reach out to us at 800-450-7876. Again, that's 800-450-7876. And Craig, let's go straight to it. Donald Trump, any surprises so far?
No, unfortunately, it's hideously not surprising to this office. We've warned for 35 years that there were specific things going on in this country, and in the end, in the long run, most Americans in whatever walk of life are going to find their standard of living lower, fewer jobs, fewer prospects, more oppression, surveillance, everything. And I did predict someone like Donald Trump would become president, whether it's a four-star general or somebody would be elected because of the backlash from what I used to call the hypocritical Christian right. What's going on affects everybody differently, but the worst backlash that could possibly happen in America that I addressed 35 years ago was the hypocritical Christian right. And I say that specifically the hypocritical. I don't know how many hypocrites are Christians, but as a Nietzschean and an existentialist, Friedrich Nietzsche basically said, by the way, he never said God is dead. One of his characters said God is dead because hypocritical Christians killed him. The point being is the reaction would be violent, it would be ugly, and it would look very much like today. I described it, that it would look very much like what we're seeing today under Trump. But the part of hypocritical Christians is this: if they were genuine Christians, and even Friedrich Nietzsche and Thomas Paine said this. By the way, Thomas Paine, one of our founding fathers, talked just like Friedrich Nietzsche. He presaged some of the things Nietzsche argued later in life, and Nietzsche praised Paine as one of his stalwart founders of the ideas. The hypocritical Christian is the Christian that pretends they're a Christian, but they're something else altogether. And everybody that's been in law enforcement or the military at a certain level, you become familiar with the people that are the liars about their faith. They're the ones that react the hardest, the most violently to protect it. And it's because they are hypocrites that they are like this. Well, this turnout for Donald Trump, and as an aside, for Hillary Clinton, two people that should never, ever have been allowed to run for public office, two people whose background is criminal, ugly, monstrous, they're bad actors, bad-mannered, and it's a horrible evolution of American politics that these two people, round figures, each got, let's say, 50 million votes. It's hideous. Now, how many on the Trump side are the hypocrites that are reacting to what's been going on for 50 years by the cultural, political, progressive left, so-called progressive left? I have no idea what the numbers are, but I do know it's going to continue to worsen. It's going to start getting violent. It's going to turn everybody against everybody, and the ones that ought to speak up will not speak up, and some that do speak up, like Lew Rockwell, Chief of Staff for Ron Paul, a man I met closer to 40 years ago in Houston when I worked out of Houston. Lew Rockwell was his Chief of Staff. Both of them were staunch libertarians. Ron later ran on the ticket to be a libertarian. Now I have to say Lew Rockwell, which I never say are friends. I don't do that. I don't have friends. I have colleagues. I have associates. I have people I know. I have no friends. I don't want any friends as long as I'm alive doing this work. Well, Lew, you just sold the country out. You went on Alex Jones. You're writing arguments now that there's a secret CIA coup d'etat against Donald Trump. Lew, you are kissing Trump's ass because you don't want to lose subscribers to your column. So you're dropping your position as a libertarian, and you're becoming a staunch gopher for Donald Trump. And I feel like this is the worst insult to everybody that's a free-thinking individual that actually understands the issues. This is an insult that Lou Rockwell is doing this. Ron Paul has fallen silent. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that I spoke to Dick Gregory this morning, and he sent me a question that he wanted to ask you, but I'll get to that momentarily. But since you're talking about right and left, you put out a paper that said Donald Trump played the libertarian right. How so?
Well, he played on because, again, when I say libertarians, I've known over the years some libertarians. I even endorsed one for the Senate. I secretly worked on his campaign to help him run for the Senate while I was working on a campaign for a Democrat that was running for a Senate seat. I worked both campaigns together. They didn't know I was working on the other campaign because they were both good men trying to do what was right. But the libertarians that are doing this, I have to tell you that they're not really and never were really the libertarians they said they were. Ron Paul was a libertarian. He ran for office. But I could not ever accept the fact that he had 20 or 30 nonprofit organizations that every time he opened up his mouth, somebody was out there raising money for the Paul money machine. It was about money. It was about power. The same thing is going on the left. I'm not singling out libertarians. I'm singling out everybody in America right now. If they each got 50 million votes, that means 100 million Americans voted for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and all 100 million of them should be taken out and shot.
All right. Hold that thought right there, because we got to check the traffic and weather in the DMV. Craig, and I'll let you continue. Folks, you want to join the discussion with Craig Hulet? Reach out to us. It's real easy. It's toll-free. It's worldwide. It's 800-450-7876. Take your calls after the traffic and weather update on AM 1450 and also FM 95.9. WOL, where information is power.
Show is here daily, 4 to 7 p.m. on WOL, News Talk 1450 AM and 95.9 FM.
And thank you for staying with us. Our guest, again, a geopolitical analyst, Craig Hulet. Already got folks who want to talk to you, Craig. Craig, his clients, by the way, include local, federal, and state law enforcement agencies, elected officials, also businesses, local, national, and international. They pay him for his research, but today you get to hear it for free. Again, you want to speak to him, 800-450-7876. Before I take some calls for the folks, I mentioned I spoke with Dick Gregory, and he was asking when you were coming on. So he wanted to know if you've heard any word that intelligence officials in the Trump administration are withholding intel from him.
Yeah, actually, yes. And I think rightfully so. I think they are withholding specific areas of the intelligence because they're afraid Trump, because he can't be controlled. He doesn't know how to give a speech. He's illiterate. He's a loudmouth. He's a bully. There's something wrong with him. A senator in Arizona says that he's mentally ill. Johns Hopkins University, 2 top psychiatrists at the hospital, Johns Hopkins, have done a study, and they say Donald Trump is mentally ill. He needs treatment. He should be removed from office. This isn't anything I haven't been familiar with. But, yeah, and the reason why they would withhold information is because, like Hillary Clinton, when she started talking about the football during the campaign, she started giving out information that was considered top secret. She could have only have gained that information from her husband when he was president, and as Secretary of State, she did not have that information. But she argued it publicly and specifically said things that relate directly to the use of nuclear weapons. She should be in jail for treason, for that act of treason. But, of course, none of these things will happen. Donald Trump, they're withholding it because he and his staff right now are people, many of them, unqualified to even hold a job in the government. He puts children, his own children, in positions, and he actually tried to get all of his kids and his wife top security clearances, and they were denied. 2 of the people that Flynn wanted to put in were denied. They're denied because they're not qualified. Why is Donald Trump picking people that are not necessarily qualified to be in his government? Because Donald Trump is a neurotic, malignant narcissist who cannot take any criticism. And in explaining his life on Mars, that's where I think he actually comes from, is a different planet, describing what's going on in the White House when he says the White House is running like a well-oiled machine. That came into my brain, and I realized what he was saying is the White House in my administration is running like a well-oiled whorehouse.
Wow.
I don't think I could get any clearer. This man is one of the most dangerous lunatics ever to be put in high office, and it happened not because of what analysts said. Trump won because he's a fake. No. Not even the elite could have admittedly seen this coming. This is here because of a backlash against everything that's happened since JFK. And I'm being very specific about that. Everything that's happened since JFK. Dozens, not just John, Bobby, Martin Luther. Dozens of people were assassinated worldwide for a decade. A book came out, and that was the title of the book, The Decade of Assassinations, and the CIA and American Pentagon was behind all of it. So the coup d'etat already took place. But they weren't going to turn it over to a Donald Trump now. It was supposed to go to Jeb Bush. They would have tolerated Hillary, but it was supposed to go to Jeb Bush, and the destruction of this country would have taken another 10, 15 years. My only concern now is that the elite are going to find Donald Trump a useful tool and an idiot, and they're going to take their contingency plan and escalate it against the American people. And Trump cannot do anything to stop it because he's in. He wants in. He'll do anything. James A. Baker III, Paul Wolfowitz, Richard Haas. He's appointing people that the right wing for decades have been afraid of. The big conspiracy, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, which I was part of the first revelations in Houston with Tony Sutton. Well, he's appointing them to high office. But the right wing doesn't care anymore. All they care about is that they've got one of their own white trash, loudmouth bullies who does nothing but act criminally in self-interest all the time in the White House. But this came here by other means. This did not happen in a vacuum. You cannot blame Russia or anybody else for what's happened. And the progressive left is as guilty, if not more guilty, than anybody on the planet for the last 50 years to create the environment for Donald Trump to win an election. They did it. Rachel Maddow, Michael Moore, Bill Maher, Amy Goodman, yes, Noam Chomsky, all of them are responsible for the backlash from the hypocritical right, Christians.
Craig, hang on a sec. We got a bunch of folks who want to talk to you already. Number to call, it's 800-450-7876 if you can get in. Mark from Anaheim also sent me a question for you. As I mentioned, he's responding to a question from Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory is in Houston. So if the folks listening to us in Houston, check him out. He's down there for the next 3 or 4 days. As I mentioned, the number to get in is 800-450-7876. KO is our first caller, calling from the district. He's on line 1. KO, you're on with Craig Hulet.
Thank you, Carl Nelson, the world's greatest talk show host on the world's greatest talk show. Hey, listen, I'm kind of, Donald Trump, I'm not phased about him. And you're right, the hypocrisy is a worldwide phenomenon, but it's also hypocrisy in all the religions. But my problem is that as an analyst, I love to hear you talk about the tail that's wagging the dog. In this case, the dog is the United States, especially the United States government. Now, who's the tail that's wagging this dog? And who does Donald Trump work for? I mean, he don't live in a vacuum. He's beholden. You say he want to be in with who? Why don't we talk about the international bankers and how they've been controlling this country, especially ever since they killed Kennedy? Probably killed Lincoln too. But anyway, I got to go.
All right. Thanks, KO. All right. Craig, who does Trump report to?
Well, it doesn't work that way. The conspiracy theorist of world history, I'm well familiar with it. I know what he means by international bankers, Trilateral Commission, everything to the furthest degree gets lumped into that. The Bohemian Club in San Francisco, every group from everything from the United Nations ends up somehow being controlled by something they refer to as the Illuminati. It doesn't work that way. Those things exist. Yes, they're true. Are they conspiratorial? Many times they are. Does your government conspire? Of course it does. We've become too ignorant about our own world history, but philosophy and the philosophy of history that goes back 6,000 years. Very little of what's going on right now is new. Most of it's a repeat, and the world has seen it over and over and over because we don't learn from history. We don't. And right now, America is leading the world in many categories, but not the best. We used to lead the world in everything that was the best. Now it's obesity, pornography, illiteracy. We fail completely in the world of math. These things came about for a reason. Something pushed these things. And yes, of course, things like the Rockefeller Foundation took the edge and manipulated university curriculums starting 50 years ago. Of course they did. Those kinds of things always happen. But this isn't a big, dark conspiracy. Let me be real clear about this. Nothing I've said in 40 years is about a conspiracy except the nature of government itself. Nothing's been hidden. I subscribed to everything published from the Club of Rome, the Council on Foreign Relations. Foreign Affairs is the journal of the Council on Foreign Relations. They published one of my anthologies. Yes, they published one of my anthologies. Trilateral Commission. Yes, I knew everything there was to know, along with Tony Sutton and Patrick Wood. Patrick Wood right now is the one that wrote the article saying, what's going on with the radical right? I thought they hated the Trilateral Commission. Or is that we only hate the Trilateral Commission if a Trilateral Commission gets appointed to office by Obama, who's black? But if Donald Trump, who's white trash, he appoints a member of the Trilateral Commission, we grant him a pass. If he appoints Richard Haas, who's the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, Trump gets a pass. That's what I'm talking about. The stupidest thing I ever heard about Donald Trump is he's got money and he can't be bought. How do you think he got the money, stupid? How do you think he became rich, period? Because he's a good businessman? No. The whole financial world knows he was one of the worst. Bankruptcy 7 times? He almost failed business-wise. The only way he could survive was to sell his name because he couldn't produce a product. So he sold his name, like Rocky Balboa, like Stallone selling Rocky T-shirts and hats. Okay? But at least that was legitimate. It was a movie. Trump had to sell his name Trump because he doesn't produce a product. He's a lousy businessman. He's never built anything from the ground up. Never. The bankruptcies were orchestrated. Now it's coming out that, yeah, even organized crime in Russia helped bail out the loser, Donald Trump. But that is nothing compared to what we're really talking about. You think Donald Trump can't be bought? Well, I'm going to tell you something.
Right, hold that thought right there, Craig, because we got to take a quick break. I'll let you finish your thoughts on the other side. We got a bunch of folks who want to speak to you. Mark from Anaheim just tweeted me a question for you as well. Folks, you can join the discussion. Tell your friends to join us right here on AM 1450 and also FM 95.9. WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is geopolitical analyst Craig Hulet. As I told you earlier, he's got a bunch of clients. There's some of them in law enforcement, so local, national, international, some elected officials, some business folks, so also national, international, and also some local folks, too. This is the man they go to figure out what's going on. A bunch of folks want to talk to you, Craig, but I'm going to let you finish up what you're saying before we go to the phones for you.
Okay, the reason they say that he can't be bought, first of all, they believe he's got $9 billion. I know he doesn't. In fact, I don't believe he has $1 billion. I don't believe he's a billionaire at all. He ran for office to become a billionaire, but he never was. That's the only reason he doesn't release his financials. That's the only reason. Then everybody would know he's a liar, that he was never a billionaire. It's all a fraud. Now, some of us that work in that world of corporate world, we knew that from the beginning. One Wall Street guy gave an interview and said, don't use my name, but I'm going to tell you right now. I can explain to you why he's not a billionaire. He pays interest on his bank loans. No billionaire ever pays interest on anything. That's because they're billionaires. Donald Trump is a liar. What's surprising here is that the American people are so out of touch with the way the corporate world actually works. The world of who's advising Trump, who matters in the background. You're not going to see him, but it was already admitted openly a few months ago. James A. Baker III, Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, and Dick Cheney had already met with Trump before he won the primary. That's why none of them signed that national security letter denouncing Trump as unfit for president from a national security standpoint. They didn't sign on any of it because they already knew that if he won, they owned his ass. How do you own a guy that claims to be a billionaire? Well, look, even if he was a billionaire, I'll tell you exactly how it works, and I don't want to talk about it the rest of the show, okay? Get a clue. I'm in the corporate world. I work for corporations. I am a corporation. I have been a corporation. Here's the point. All they have to do is, Trump, there's a few things we're going to need you to do down the road. You can do whatever else you want, but there's a few things you're going to need to do so you're not removed from office. And Dick Cheney is probably the biatch that delivered the message. You do as you're told on these things that matter. No one will know, and it'll be okay. And at the end of 4 years or 8 years, or the probability that if Donald Trump gets 8 years, he'll run for a third term, he gets what? He gets on the board of directors of the largest, most powerful banks and corporations in the world. He gets stock in the largest, most important banks and corporations in the world. Something Trump hasn't done, cannot do, and never did. That's how you buy anybody in America. And if you think that can't buy Donald Trump, I will be more than glad to tell you. Call in and say that Donald Trump can't be bought and what I said is true. I'm just going to say you're stupid.
All right. Hold that thought right there. 800-450-7876. Line 2. Charlie's calling us from somewhere in Tennessee. Charlie, you're on with Craig Hulet.
Yeah, hey, Craig. Hi. I like your analogy. I want to ask you a question. Everybody worrying about Trump. We already know he's been sold out. Half of America's sold out. They'll sell out over crumbs. And like you said, dealing with corporations, it sounds like you sold out a little bit too. Let's talk about Pence. What's going on with Pence and the so-called urban warfare is coming? Why, the analogy you put out, why would urban warfare come and black people are not America's problem? We're not the one with the jobs, and black people are not going to uprise and take over nothing. So why would they do that? Sound like a misconception. Is the real problem is white trash? Thank you, my friend.
Okay. The men that do, in fact, have a say about the things that matter, like James A. Baker III and Henry Kissinger and the Rockefellers and Dick Cheney, they all have large families. Their children come after them, one right after the other. There will always be a Bush in the background running for office. But these people do have an idea about how they want to see the world work. The New World Order is already here. It's been here for decades. They allow you to still have your conspiracies and believe in all sorts of nonsense because you're ineffectual and, in fact, you're wrong. So everything you do to try to prevent the New World Order is going to fail because you're wrong. It's already here. It's in place. And Trump wants in. Trump wants in. He wants a seat at the table, just like Noam Chomsky and Rachel Maddow and Ralph Nader. They want a seat at the table, okay? Trump is not anti-government. Trump is pro-Trump. Now, when I say that he's white trash, I mean that in a very specific way, okay? That terminology shouldn't be just thrown around about white people. White trash is something that people become and who they are as an act of will. So, yeah, if you're black, you can become white trash. If you're Native American, you can become white trash. It depends on how you think about the way the world works. I can tell who Donald Trump is by his language, by his body language. In fact, a linguist recently said about Donald Trump, it was a woman, PhD, she said, interesting, when I look at Donald Trump giving a speech and I listen to the words he uses, his minuscule vernacular, his lack of a base of knowledge of words and grammar. He simply cannot speak well because his vocabulary is only 800 words. She also added, interestingly enough, when he speaks as a woman. His gestures, his hand gestures with his little tiny hands, he uses them as he speaks as a woman. And she found that to be startling, that he is reminiscent of a woman speaking. Well, that's because Donald Trump has never really been a man, as a man ought to be. Every cop knows what I'm talking about. Even bad cops know what I'm talking about. Donald Trump is a huckster, a liar, a con man. He's very good at it, and that's the part that sounds like a woman. When a man talks the way he talks in a Q&A or gives a speech, when he talks that way, you can hear it. Any cop can see this guy's a con artist. That's why he talks the way he does. That's why his hand keeps making these little gestures. He's conning you. He's working you. That's the language of the work, the game, the trap. He's a liar and a fraud. But the part about being white trash, the man's never lived as an American male. Half your audience may be black, and I'm going to tell you right now, I know half your audience have lived as an American male. They act as